So I'm very excited today to be joined by Martin Palethorpe from Unbounded to talk about quality of mind. It's a topic that's very close to my heart, and I think it will go a long way towards answering some of the challenges we're facing at the moment, when lots of the questions we're dealing with we've never faced before. So Martin, thank you for joining today. Really excited to explore these questions with you. So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we sort of pile into quality of mind? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background is the first half of my career was in the technology sector, going up the ladder, then running sales organizations, and then running an organization, a technology business, before I became an executive coach nearly 20 years ago, and worked with leaders on all sorts of topics, leaders and leadership teams. And over the last 6 years, what I realized during that time was the importance of the role of the mind in everything, in helping humans, individuals, and indeed leaders be as effective as they can be in work and life. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, we have focused very specifically on working with people, really teaching them about the mind in a highly experiential way to help them look at what's going on for them, to enable them to have mindset shift, to unlock the power of their mind.
Fantastic. And full disclosure, I have known Martin probably for about 10 or 15 years. And I have been working with Martin on what we refer to as quality of mind over the last few years. So I'm definitely understand some of Martin's journey and the potential that quality of mind, or a good quality of mind, can bring to your work and to your life, frankly. And since we touched on quality of mind, and I know there's a lot of ways of defining it, but could you just, for people that aren't so familiar with it, could you just explain what we mean by quality of mind in this context?
Yeah. So if you think about your mind, sometimes your mind will be low quality of mind. And low quality of mind is when you are angry or judgmental or frustrated or sad or depressed or worried or overwhelmed. It's like the quality of the mind and the way it's working is low in those examples. And high quality of mind is when it's working amazingly, when you are self-expressed or calm or clear thinking or creative, all of those aspects, when the quality of the mind and the way it's working is high. So that's what we are referring to, is the quality of the way that the mind is working.
And I always go back to that line, which is the using your feelings as a measure of the quality of your thinking. That idea of your feelings are kind of betraying the quality of mind that you're having in that moment, and that's really always been very useful for me as a way of recognizing if I'm feeling anxious or cross or irritated. I recognize that sort of maybe my quality of mind isn't as high as it could be. So that's the context of quality of mind, and it sounds so simple, but it's something I use all the time when I'm talking to my clients, and that's why I asked you to come and talk to us about this a little bit. So I've got a real world scenario here. The clients I deal with are typically leading a business, or they're founders of a business, agencies, typically independent agencies. So the question would be that I know that my staff want to work more flexibly, and it feels like the right thing to do. But for some reason, I'm dragging my feet, and I've heard this from 2 or 3 clients, this idea that they absolutely responding to their team wanting to work more flexibly, but they're not really resolving it and taking charge of it and making it a positive experience for everybody. And it feels to me somewhere that their quality of mind isn't as high as it might be, and they're probably getting in their own way. I wonder what you thought about that.
So what do they mean by more flexibly?
Well, I think in this case, more flexibly would mean allowing staff to work from wherever they wanted to work from when it was practical to do so. rather than simply being office-based 9 to 5. But it might mean more flexibility in terms of core hours. I've had that discussion with some of my clients. It's about allowing people to engage with work in a way that's more suitable and appropriate for them, but also giving some guidance and guidelines, because practically a lot of agencies, they're people businesses, and you need people connecting, and there's a certain belief in osmosis and so on. So I think, you know, the discussion is being had, but I'm not seeing the actions being taken, or the positive actions being taken. And I wondered if there was some quality of mind challenges happening in there that you might be able to unpick.
Okay. So the first thing is, if they're dragging their feet on sorting this out, the question is why? And they may not have spent enough quality of time contemplating the issue. And it sounds to me like they need to spend a bit more time exploring, going, you know, when you procrastinate on something, you procrastinate and you procrastinate and you procrastinate, and there's a reason you're procrastinating, but you maybe haven't even realized you're procrastinating. If you have, you might not have pulled back and said, let me just really explore and inquire and think about why am I? What's the thinking that I've got going on that's having me not prioritize this?
I think that's really interesting, and perhaps this idea of procrastination is could be seen as a positive thing, in the sense that I know you and I speak often about this, is letting your subconscious do the heavy lifting, do some of the work for you. And I know, I'm pretty sure it's one of Martin's made up stats, but you said that 10% of your thinking goes on in your conscious and 90% in your subconscious. I'm not sure if those are the numbers, or if maybe I just made those up, but an awful lot of the really, really deep thinking and consideration goes in your subconscious, and you have those sort of, you know, we talk about the moment in the shower where you suddenly everything becomes clear to you, or those moments when you're in flow, I think you would call it. And perhaps some of the procrastination is coming from because it hasn't resolved, and if people haven't given it the time, they haven't really allowed themselves to dwell on it and reflect on it properly.
Yeah. And I've got two sets of thoughts coming from what you've just shared, Andy. And the first thing is, to reflect on it and go, well, why am I putting this off? And it might be because it's confronting. It might be that you're worried about losing control, and your stereotypical approach to managing people has been quite controlling and maybe lacking trust. It might be something like that. So this whole concept, you might be stuck in the paradigm of the 90s rather than the societal paradigm around work of the 2020. And so, yes, reflection is really important to go, well, what am I resisting here, and why, and what do I need to learn, and what do I need to get over, at least to be able to have this conversation. So the other thing that I like to just spend a bit more time on here is the trust piece. What's your relationship to trusting other people in your organization? And what we tend to do, and there's a couple of things, right? It could be that we've just grown up, as I mentioned earlier, about, you know, as a bit controlling, just generally not trusting people until they prove themselves. So I'm not extending trust to you until I know that I can trust you. And I might have quite high bars in my head, and that can inhibit my leadership style, because people know they're not really trusted until they've earned it, and that's not an empowering. It's not giving off the right energy. It's not an empowering way of being. Now, so how do we extend trust? How do we challenge people but always extend trust? I could hear you in my head going, yeah, but what if someone has done something that proves to them, proves that I can't trust them? And your job as a manager is to empower, challenge, yes, challenge, but also empower and inspire and get the best out of other people. And if you end up with a story in your head of, I don't trust that person, and you leave that story in your head for a long time, then you're giving off a vibe to that person, and your behavior to that person is not going to get the best out of them. So if you don't trust them, it's actually your job to work on yourself to work out how you can evolve that relationship and develop that person to a stage where you can.
Absolutely right, and I totally agree with that. That possibly was what I was thinking, but I think this is, if you get to the point where you don't trust a member of your team, you're a couple of steps away from that conversation we've all heard, which is, I can't be in the same room as them. They drive me crazy. I can't speak to them, otherwise I just sort of go up the wall. And you and I might describe that as going up a ladder. And you tend to respond when someone goes up a ladder like that towards you, then you tend to go up your ladder and respond differently, and then they see that as sort of evidence of what they believed in the first place, so they go further up their ladder, and you can get to the point where you're sacking members of staff, or you're effectively behaving quite badly towards people, created around something where someone originally was just responding to a sense they were picking up from you. So there's a huge responsibility for managers here, not just to blindly and stupidly trust people, but I think the idea of that, they have to earn my trust. They have to do something to prove it. They have to get the time under their belt. I think is not a smart or helpful way of thinking here. And what I also heard when you were talking was that it's really vital to get to a good state of quality of mind, so that you can have the conversation openly and freely and in great spirit with somebody, which says, this is how I feel. This is how I'm responding. These are the things that I'm feeling at the moment. What can we do about that? How are you feeling about it? Because the second you do that, you start coming down your ladder, don't you? Which is you start breaking that created reality. So the idea of, which we haven't touched on in this question, but which maybe actually you could explain, but the idea of you thinking, well, I know what they're thinking. I teased you about it earlier, but you know what they're thinking. You don't. That's just a reality you've created.
Yeah. So before I touch on that, then let me just be a bit clearer with people about the ladder, because we haven't explicitly explained that. So we're talking about what's actually called the Inference Ladder, and it came out of Harvard University back in the 70s, I think, from a professor called Chris Argyris. And the concept of the ladder, the Inference Ladder, is that we as human beings are constantly inferring things. So if I see you frown, I'll be inferring something about that frown. If I see you come in late today, I'll be inferring something about that. And so what happens is we go up a ladder, layers and layers of thought that we put together to create stories that, this person is a certain way. They're not reliable, then this, they're that, I can't be trusted. Last time they presented, they didn't do it well, so I'm not going to let them do that again. And before we know it, we're up a ladder about them, having created a full story that prevents us from being effective in our relationship with them, and also in how we work with and manage them. So it's vital not to be working with people. And what you'll find some people where you're naturally down a ladder and connected, and the relationship flows. But with others, actually, you're caught up in some thinking that is your responsibility to do something about. Otherwise, it's going to totally impact your relationship, your connections, and your ability to be an effective leader.
There's a couple of things coming out of this, a couple of really big themes coming out of this for me, which is firstly around your own beliefs and have you given yourself time to think about this really? We're kind of slightly getting railroaded along by flexible working is here, it'll never be the same again. No one will ever need an office again. And there's a kind of a bit of a tsunami of opinion out there, and perhaps people, we would encourage people to give themselves time to step away and really, really reflect on how they feel about it and how they're responding to it. And the second bit, I think, is this idea of trust, which is, we just explored, and your relationship to trust and your relationship with other people, and how your quality of mind is impacting your ability to communicate with other people about that, seems really fundamental here. And if you could address both of those things, you probably go a long way towards sort of getting past dragging your feet and the procrastination towards
Yes.
getting a plan together, because the planning of it's not that difficult. There's no right answer. Everyone needs the answer they need, but it's getting to the point where you can come up with a plan that's really coherent and really considered and fair on people and clear. I think that's perhaps the other point was clarity. That I've been referred to as Clarity Brown, and I love a bit of clarity. But this idea of just being clear, a lot of this might be down to, in the end, you're going to be judged by the plan you put to your team, and the more clear you are, the better. If you're not clear, if you're not really able to be definitive about it and answer people's questions, then perhaps you're going to feel that it was ill-considered, or people will think less of you. So maybe your quality of mind is saying, until I know I have the definitive plan that's definitely going to work 100%, I'm going to drag my feet. I wonder if there might be a little bit of that in there.
I think it's a really good point, because some people wait for clarity, and they're waiting because they want to get it right. And especially in the world today, is that it's very unclear. There's no right or wrong. There's only going with what you think at the time. And so I'm working it through with people to create a plan that could be modifiable in the future, but not getting caught up in, well, I'm going to wait until I can work it out, because you might be waiting too long, and in the process of waiting, not being clear, and hence having confusion and people upset.
It's all comes back to quality of mind and how we think about how we're perceived, and the thinking that gets in our way, or the thinking that liberates us equally, because quality of mind isn't a negative thing. It can be, it's just a spectrum, isn't it? So great quality of mind when you're in flow, that can absolutely liberate you, and you make amazing decisions and do all the really great stuff. And it's really the point we're making, I suppose, is this is an example, but is more often you can be in flow, the more often you can have a higher quality of mind, the better your experience of life is going to be, the more you're going to contribute to other people, and the more successful you're going to be in whatever it is you wanted to achieve, which sounds like some kind of party political statement, so apologies for that. But I think that's the point about quality of mind, is it's always a journey. So I think we've got a sense of what quality of mind and being more aware of quality of mind could do for us. But if people want to understand more about this and look more deeply into it, because there's so many things I've scribbled down here that we could have spoken about, where would they go? What would they do, Martin?
So our organization is Unbounded. Our website is b-unbounded.com. They're welcome to go on there and have a look. There's a plethora of interesting blogs that they might look at, or videos to watch, and so on. If they're interested, there's a free quality of mind indicator they can take, that's a free self-assessment that helps them really look at and think about the quality of their own mind. And then, of course, we run programs. So we run Quality of Mind as a retreat, we run it as a virtual program, and we provide one-to-one specific coaching to help people with their own specific situations.
Fantastic. And I have been on the retreat and found it incredibly worthwhile, life-changing. So thank you, Martin. I think that was really helpful. If anyone wants to know anything about quality of mind, they now know where to go. I'm b-unbounded.com. Thank you very much.